in part by grants, and that's the Nuestro Futuro Foundation and the Fred Baldwin Memorial Foundation. So we want to thank them, and as well Maui College for hosting us tonight and giving us this great venue to get together in. So as you know, this November, all of you voters have some big decisions before you that will really have some significant impact on your county government. So we wanted to get together tonight just to make sure everyone understands these 13 questions that you'll be getting on your ballot. You know, it's quite a lot of questions, quite a lot of pages, and we're hoping to really unpack that. Yeah.
So I guess to start out, I would love to ask you folks briefly just why should folks care and why should folks really pay attention and actually fill out the last page of their ballot?
Well, some of the proposals on the charter amendment list are very, very important and would have long-lasting effects on Maui County's future. The two that I have been working on the hardest are the number one on creating a new housing department, and number 12 that would allow the creation of an East Maui water authority and the potential to create additional water authorities for West Maui and Central Maui and for Molokai. But the other amendments are also important. Some of them are really just housekeeping amendments that, every 10 years you realize there's small defects in the charter that need to be fixed. But for me, it's housing and water are the two overriding reasons to vote for these charter amendments.
Hi, Dave DeLeon. I want to thank the Civil Beat for putting this on. This is a real test of civics education, and that's what our voters are being stuck with. The real challenge for their sense of the civics of our government. And the Charter Commission was quite a scene. It ran for a year and a half, and sometimes I felt like we were trying to handle a fire hose of information. And because a lot of people had a lot of ideas, and we at one point had 130 proposals sitting there, and we drilled it down to, we finally got it down to 11 at the end. One point I'd like to point out early on, and so I don't forget to get this in here, if you, for the voters to leave anything blank, if you leave a blank vote on there, you didn't do anything with it, you didn't do anything with it. It's not a no vote. In certain conditions and certain types of, I believe in the state constitutional amendments, if you leave a blank, that's a no vote. That's not the case in this situation. A blank vote, a blank action, no action is no action.
Well, I guess, otherwise,
a lot has changed in the past 3 years, and sitting on the Charter Commission, we got a lot of feedback around that change, and this is our best attempt at addressing the changes that we thought the charter could change. There's lots of things that the charter doesn't change, but these are votes that we believe the charter can make an impact on.
So we'll just jump in and we'll start with the first charter amendment proposal, which is actually a really big one. And I'm going to go ahead and read what a yes vote means, which this charter amendment proposal would create a separate housing department dedicated to affordable housing and include an advisory board and a Hawaiian Homelands liaison. So a yes vote supports dividing the Department of Housing and Human Concerns, which is what the county currently has, into two separate departments. So the amendment also creates the new Housing Advisory Board that's tasked with advising, aiding, and supporting the housing director's efforts to create affordable housing. Finally, the amendment creates a new position within the Department of Housing that is tasked with acting as a liaison with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands on all matters involving housing development within the county. And I know Dave and Michael, you both have worked on this proposal, and I'd love to hear from you about kind of why you think this is important and where this came from.
First, I should clarify, I was on the Charter Commission only for like the last 4 months of its almost 2-year existence, because Lance Collins had to resign because he got a judicial appointment, and I was the fill-in. So I really didn't participate in this fire hose of information that these other two guys did. But for me, the reason we need the housing department separate from the Department of Human Concerns, there's several good reasons, but one is the current administration has no one with the competence or the capacity to negotiate with developers on county-owned lands where we need to build low-income rentals. The only way we're ever going to be able to have enough low-income rentals in this county is to build them on county land with a nonprofit developer who can, when they get the land for free and they get all the infrastructure they need, then they can afford to build the buildings and manage the rentals for 30 years. But the administration didn't have anyone even capable of writing a request for proposals to developers to come and tell us what they could do with these county-owned lands. They literally had to issue a request for proposal to someone to come and write the request for proposals, believe it or not. I'm on the board of Stand Up Maui, which is a housing advocacy group here, been around for a long time. I've only worked with them about the last 6 years, but we tried to get the current mayor to do a comprehensive affordable housing plan, and he didn't do it. And so we finally convinced the council to procure one, and they did. They spent $350,000 and got a really good comprehensive affordable housing plan. And the first thing it recommended was that the mayor appoint a sort of housing czar, someone to be in charge of managing all of the housing development. And even though that happened 1 year and 4 months ago, he hasn't done it yet. We don't have anyone appointed. And it's because there is no one in the current administration who's competent to do that. So if we create a separate housing department with its own director and its own associate director, it can hire the right kind of people who can manage this. Another thing that we need to be able to do is negotiate with the private developers on the ownership homes. And a great example of that is what just happened this week with Pulelehua, where the mayor struck a deal with Paul Chang, the developer, to do a much better job of providing affordable housing in exchange for some infrastructure support. The council endorsed it almost completely. And that's an example of what we can do to build ownership homes, truly affordable homes. And the housing problem doesn't just affect our low income people. It affects, we have 100 vacant police officer positions. We have teachers that come here and live for 2 or 3 years and realize they can't really afford to stay, and they're gone. We have shortages of engineers in the Department of Water Supply and in Public Works, and they can't keep them here, even if they can attract them, because they can't afford to live here. They can't afford a decent home. Same is true of new doctors. They come here and they start to have kids, and they realize the public schools aren't that great, and they can't afford a decent home for their family. So the housing problem permeates the county and hurts the county in many, many ways, besides just forcing people to live in their cars or sleep on the streets or double up on the couches and in garages of their in-laws and friends. So it's very important. One other thing about this, the only argument I've heard against doing this is that, oh, we can't afford it. The auditor said it's going to cost $2 million a year to run this new department. Well, frankly, that's baloney. The council this year put $39 million new dollars into the Affordable Housing Fund, and they would have put even more in if they thought the current administration knew how to spend it, because we have the money now. The Cost of Government Commission just issued a report this week. I happen to be the chair of it, on the property tax system in the county. And what we point out is that Maui County is the wealthiest municipality in the country if you measure it by the amount of wealth taxable by the county per capita. We have more real estate wealth in Maui County per capita than any other city or county in the country. And because of the state constitution, Maui County doesn't have to share it with anybody. They also can't control how we organize the property tax system. And it's been reorganized with this council we've had the last 3 years to really make it much more progressive, much fairer, and isolate the second homes and the short-term rentals in a way that we can now tax them. Almost all of that's going to be paid by wealthy out-of-state people or by tourists. And we can spend it on affordable housing and solve all our housing problems.
And Dave,
So-
oh, sorry.
Sorry,
I was
know
going
I'm
to say,
not-
we've got a lot of charter
But
amendments
Mike-
we have to talk about. Sorry, guys.
But Mike, tell us what you really feel.
Dave, I'd like to give you a second to just jump in because I know you worked on this for a long time, and then we'll move on to number 2, and then we've
I
got.
originally wrote the concept, and the concept was a housing development department. It's not meant to be a bureaucratic office that's going to deal with all things. At least the way I perceived it when I wrote it, it wasn't supposed to be handling, the miscellaneous, or not the miscellaneous, but the social service aspect of housing. That will stay with human concerns. And because they have the capacity to do that. What we need is, when Mike was talking about a housing czar, the difference between a housing czar and a department is a full-blown department with all the administrative capacity, a seat at the table in the cabinet, a director and a deputy director who are primed to do this job. A housing czar is a guy in a cubicle in the back of the mayor's office. So that's the difference. And you don't have the firepower with a housing czar. I mean, that's not going to happen. So that's why we needed to bring this thing up to a full-blown department. People talk about $2 million. That was what the auditor suggested what's might cost. That's 2 medium-priced houses in Maui County. We need about 100,000. Right now for the existing population. That's why we have people on the street. That's why we have a lot of people really hurting. In a lot of our homelessness stuff is related to what Mike was talking about. We got to get those kind of low-cost rentals out and get something going with the housing supply. Every economist has reviewed this and said it's the same thing. It's supply and demand. And we get the demand from the mainland. We get pushed really hard. The prices go up. We can't keep doctors. We can't keep nurses. We can't keep teachers. Because what teacher is going to want to work full bore as a teacher and then have to work another job to be able to pay the rent? And my analogy to this is sort of like us not having a housing department. It's sort of like a Northern California community not having a fire department. I'll leave it at that.
Just one more thing on the choice, right? Housing, the issues of housing are just really complex. The solutions are all over the map, right? There's solutions within the county. There's solutions of finance. There's solutions, supporting our community members to become homeowners and prepared to be homeowners. This charter amendment is asking or sort of identifying one potential part of a solution, and it's saying that if we create, or at least the idea behind it, is if we create a separate department, that'll enable the administration to have more focus on housing. This doesn't take the place of good leadership. It doesn't take the place of good decision-making. It just provides one more tool for the administration to create more focus. And for many people looking at the system, the administration isn't focused on the problem and finding solutions to it.
Thank you, guys. We're going to move on now to the second proposal, which would create a Department of Oiwi Resources and affirm that the county will operate as a bilingual government in Hawaiian and English language. A yes vote supports the creation of a new county department called the Department of Oiwi Resources, which would implement programs for Native cultural resources, including Hawaiian language, cultural practices, and natural resources. The director of the department would act as an ex officio non-voting member of planning commissions. The amendment also affirms that the county will operate as a bilingual government. So two big pieces here in this proposal. The auditor estimates that this, if voters say that they want this, it would cost about $400,000. Keone, can you walk us through this? Why do we need this? What issue or problem is this trying to correct or improve upon in your eyes?
I think there are a number of sort of avenues to understanding this proposal. The big picture for me is government that has all the skill sets to make good decisions for our community. And right now, we don't have this skill set, especially not in the leadership of our county. I see the county sort of building the skill set in different places. I think the mayor has, well, I know that the mayor has a cultural advisor that's actually been put to good use. As a note, that's my partner as well. But the idea is that if we have this skill set within our county government, we can make better decisions. And to just go back to the housing issue, there are a lot of tension points in the housing system. There are environmental tension points, there are cultural tension points, and the county can do a lot better at addressing these before they become points of issue and contention between a developer and the community. I think that there's a lot of work that can be done on the ground to identify cultural resources ahead of time, to ensure that the state laws and federal laws that are looking at evaluating a space and determining whether there are cultural properties there with their cultural resources, that those evaluations are done well, so that we don't find out later that in fact, there's a burial ground or there's a heiau. Those things can be identified early on. Once developers, look at a piece of land and they have financing for it, that means the clock is ticking and they're paying for that financing, and it just makes everything more expensive. Now that's just one side of this. I think the opportunities for our county government to engage in our communities and to support the natural resources, which are also cultural resources for our communities, is really important. I'm thinking of as well out in Ke'anai side, right? There's some good work going on in water management and monitoring, right? And that work is intersecting both scientific monitoring systems, but utilizing people with traditional knowledge. And how is the county benefiting and utilizing that knowledge set and that essentially data that's coming out of these communities to make good decisions? Climate change is a huge issue that we need to address. County is on the front line. Both policy and action needs to happen. And one of the important tools for addressing climate change is understanding the change and understanding the specific impacts happening. And I think a lot of our Hawaiian culture practitioners are there on the front line. And if they had an avenue into a feedback loop, essentially into our county government, it would enable that knowledge set to impact our policy and our actions as a county.
Thank you for breaking that down. We're going to move to the third charter amendment, which would improve upon the county's code of ethics. So I will explain to you what a yes vote means in that context. A yes vote for the third proposal supports 3 significant changes to the code of ethics. 1, appointed officers and employees would be required to file their financial disclosure statements prior to taking office. 2, officers or employees would be prohibited from taking official action in which the officer or employee has a direct or indirect financial interest. And 3, officers or employees would be prohibited from using or attempting to use their position for unwarranted advantage to themselves or others. The amendment also adds a requirement that annual updates to financial disclosure statements be filed by February 15th of each calendar year. The county estimates that if voters decide that, yes, they want these changes to the code of ethics, it would cost less than $25,000.
And then we're going to go ahead and jump into number 4, which is another substantive proposal that is related to the Maui Planning Commission. So a yes vote on proposal number 4 means that right now the charter currently does not require regional representation on the Maui Planning Commission. A yes vote in favor of requiring that Maui Planning Commission members include at least 1 person from each of Maui's council residency areas. So there are 9 of those across the county. and no more than 2 members who reside in each council residency area. This amendment would also allow for Kalaupapa Molokai to be included within the jurisdiction of the County of Maui if state law allows for such a change. The amendment would also provide that community plans will be reviewed and updated as set by ordinance. So who wants to jump in on this one? And for other background, the auditor said that this could cost up to $100,000.
Just a quick note, I think there's 7 residency districts on Maui. Yeah,
Sorry,
so there's
I'm getting
really 7.
confused with council. I opened up a can of
Sorry.
worms.
So there, but there's, yeah.
So the point we're discussing here is the fact that Molokai has its own planning commission, even though it has only had 8,000 people, and Lanai has its own planning commission, even though it really only has 3,000 or 4,000 people. And yet Maui, with 155,000 people, only has one planning commission too. And the representation has historically been mostly from West Maui and South Maui, and not from other parts of the island. This proposal is actually a big compromise. A lot of the people fought for a charter amendment that would create a separate planning commission for each of the 7 districts council districts that Maui has. They would all be comparable in size of population to the 2 that we have in Lanai and Molokai. But that didn't get enough votes, and so this was the compromise to still try to make the current planning commission much more representative of the whole island. And I think it's good for that reason.
The idea was, this was an alternative to the 6th planning commission proposal, and there was a lot of problems with the 6th plan. It wasn't going to be easy to operate. It wasn't going to be easy to get the population for it. Right now, one of the problems with this proposal is there will have to be a Molokai, a Hana member, and sometimes that's not easy to do. And I can tell you because I spent 12 years as the boards and commission guys in 2 different administrations, and there are certain places where you really have difficulty finding people. I mean, because the population is so small, and it's a small percentage. You could imagine the difficulty trying to get 9 planning commissioners out of Lanai, or every time, or Molokai. Really difficult to get their 9. So this is a compromise that maybe didn't even have to happen if the administration and the council had actually leaned on the process and made sure that everybody was covered. They could have done it, just inside their own powers. This will lock it in. So, and the case in point was that a couple of times, Kihei, South Maui didn't have a representative, and about half the business on the planning commission is SMA in Kihei. So, so it was kind of like a real problem that that community didn't even have a representative on the board, on the council, on the commission at the time. So yeah, so this is, to me, it's a relatively simple answer to a relatively simple compromise for a very tricky question. Thank you.
Marina, will we leave time for the people from the audience to ask some questions? Because something Dave just said is inaccurate.
Again?
Sorry, not right now.
So it was clear from our commission meetings that folks wanted some sort of change. And of course, the proposals were all over the board. And we had some really great conversations trying to dig into what the problem is. I think the proposal in front of everybody is saying, hey, maybe a broader representation from every district may help. But I know that doesn't address, and from all angles, people have issues with how the planning commission is functioning. So this is one potential, or it's a solution. Whether it addresses the problems that came before us is not entirely clear.
Well, we're going to move on to the next one, which is Charter Amendment Proposal 5. And this amendment the changes aren't quite as substantial as some of the other ones, but a yes vote favors making 3 different changes to the county's charter. One is the council would be required to provide interactive communications with the public in Hana, Lanai, Molokai, and other geographic areas to council meetings and council committee meetings. The second thing it would do is that county employees would be required to facilitate access to county records and minimize fees charged to the public that make requests for county records. And that is something that is currently not spelled out in our charter right now. And then the third is that the council would be able to determine the time and place of its organizational meeting to elect officers. And that's kind of the first meeting of the year where they decide who's going to chair what committees and stuff like that. So that currently the charter requires the council to meet at a certain place or time, and this would allow them flexibility on that, which was something that came up during the pandemic as something that folks wanted.
Great. Moving on to the 6th reform that will appear on your ballot. Number 6 would remove the cap on penalties for violations of laws so that they may be set by ordinance. A yes vote in this context means that the charter will include a cap on the punishments that may be provided in law for violations of rules or ordinances. The cap is this incorrect? Yeah. It is backward. Anyway, so a yes vote will basically mean that the charter will no longer have any cap on violations. Recently, voters approved a much higher penalty for folks who are found in violation of the transient accommodations, such as Airbnb or bed and breakfast or other short-term rentals. That would also go away. So we'd sort of have a clean slate and there would be no cap. Then the council could then go and propose penalties based on different violations as they see fit. And the idea here is that for some people, $1,000 fine per day for being in violation of some law, it is pocket change. It's not a big deal to them, and they would rather do things how they want to do them and pay the fee. So this, the intent is really just to bring the penalty in line with the crime. And so nothing would change other than the removal of the cap. And then again, the council could go in, and if they so choose, they could set fines that are above the ceiling that right now in place is $1,000 per day. I'm going to move on to the 7th proposal, which would limit the powers of the mayor to appoint administrative department heads. A yes vote in this context favors limiting the powers of the mayor to appoint administrative department heads by 1, requiring an administrative head nominated by the mayor to vacate office if denied appointment by the council. And 2, it would prohibit the mayor from requiring a candidate for the head of an administrative department to submit a letter of resignation as a condition of appointment. So if you were to vote no on this proposal, it would keep the powers of the mayor to appoint administrative heads as is. There'd be no change. Proposal number 8 we'll move on to now. It would authorize the county clerk to update the charter, and 2, it would prohibit the county clerk and the deputy clerk from actively participating in political campaigns. So a yes vote in this context favors adding an additional duty to the powers, duties, and functions of the county clerk. The clerk would have the power to update the charter to correct non-substantive errors in compliance with the law, and subject to the approval of the Corporation Council and a majority of the council. So what this means is that if there is a spelling error in the charter, or things are numbered incorrectly, or there is a stipulation in the charter that sunset a long time ago and is no longer in play. Right now, it's unclear who has the ability to change fix these errors, basically. The only way right now is through the charter amendment process. So I think, folks on the commission thought it would be a little silly to take the time, your precious time, and have you vote on fixing the spelling of a Hawaiian word or the grammar or punctuation. So this just allows the clerk to be able to make those changes, but it includes this checks and balances where corporation counsel and the county council would need to sign off on it. So the county clerk couldn't just go rogue. At least that's the hope. Also, the clerk and deputy clerk would be banned from taking part in political campaigns. That includes donating to campaigns, campaigning actively in any way. So far, there's been a history of the clerk and deputy clerk sort of scouts honor doing this. There hasn't really been any scandals where they've jumped into politics. But this would just make it law. It would sort of enshrine this concept that this is a nonpartisan part of government. It would put it in the charter because in case there are anything that comes up in the future, it's sort of like a protection policy for the future.
Just to note that the county clerk is our chief elections officer.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's the reason for them to be nonpartisan and clean.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't want the county clerk to take the his or her favorite candidate and put them first or do anything that would favor a candidate. Again, to my knowledge, there's no history of the clerk, doing this, but we just want to, the idea is just to protect, that from happening in the future.
In these wild and crazy times.
Yes. There's lots of examples of, of things going poorly in that regard. Marina?
So then we're going to jump into proposal 9, which is relating to police. But before I read that, I actually wanted to give you folks a chance to talk about the process a little bit more, because I know there were a lot of policing proposals that were initially talked about through the commission. And then we ended up with one on the ballot, but I kind of wanted to give you folks just a minute about like, how did we actually get to these 11?
Get to these 11, the set of proposals it all started in March 2021. So we had 11 commissioners and listened to the feedback of the community, first to identify where the issues are, and then to identify once proposals and wording for the proposals come forward, to get feedback on whether this is actually addressing the issues that our communities are seeing. And so the work of the commission pretty much ended this past May. And to get to these 12, I know there's more than that, but.
11 from the commission and 2 from council.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work through that because it's a little confusing. I lost my space.
So yeah, we went through a process of elimination. So we started with 130 plus proposals. And so anything was offered made the list, and then we whittled that down to a minimum of I think 85. And I thought, oh, well, this is good. We're going in the right direction. And then eventually, some of these proposals were like the one with the clerk just now. There's 2 items there. So rather than having 2 items on the clerk, we melded them together into one. So it just releases the pressure on the sheer number of it. Yeah, it was a process of elimination. One thing about this commission, this is the first charter commission that was appointed 9 members by the council and 2 members by the mayor, which set up an interesting dynamic in it. And some of the process, some of the topics that came, you could see it coming from different directions. But in the end, I think we settled down and realized that number one, we got to be able to sell this to the voters, and the voters going to have to recognize, be able to understand the importance of what we're proposing, and bring it home in a manner that was digestible. 11 might be too much. I mean, number 9 coming up, for instance, is I don't know whether we need to have 2 proposals there, really. I mean, it There are two, and the voters are going to have to pick one of those two. The way that works, though, is if they both pass, they both get more positive votes than negative votes. The one with the more of a positive votes is the actual succeeding item. So that's the ruling of the Corporation Council.
So speaking of number 9, so yeah, as Dave mentioned, there are actually 2 proposals. So there's 9 and then there's 9A, which is the council's alternative of what the Charter Commission came up with. So this proposal would require that the chief of police submit a written report whenever the chief disagrees with the findings of the police commission, which is the body of volunteers that is tasked with responding to the public's complaints of misconduct. So that's the first one that, yeah, whenever the chief of police disagrees, they have to submit those reasons in writing. And then the second one is council's alternative, which just changes the language very slightly, which is that requires the chief of police to submit the reasons in writing whenever the chief disagrees, but upon the commission's request. So it wouldn't necessarily need to happen all the time. It would just need to happen when the commission asked the police to give his reasons why he didn't believe their investigation into misconduct or whatever that may be. So this proposal, when I went back and kind of looked at the meeting minutes about when council members were discussing this, the chief had actually told them that our current chief hadn't had an instance since he had held that job where he actually disagreed with them. So this didn't come up all that often. So those are your 2 proposals on number 9 that you as a voter get to weigh between.
Exciting stuff.
Moving on to proposal 10 and 10A. So there's a lot packed in here. I'm going to try to unpack it for you. So this proposal would, proposal 10, create an independent nomination board to recruit, evaluate, and recommend people for county boards, commissions, and the positions of county clerk, auditor, corporation counsel, and prosecuting attorney. So baked into this proposal, number 10, it would create a 9-member independent nomination board with its membership appointed by the mayor and approved by the council. So the nomination board, again, would recruit, evaluate, nominate people for boards and commissions, as well as those 5 positions within county government. It would, and I think the idea is to sort of further remove the process of nominating people from politics, and also to have a board who can sort of see the entire landscape. There's so many boards and commissions, and they would be able to sort of have this broader view of how to populate all of these boards and commissions, I think is one of the ideas. Number 2, this would eliminate the prohibition on paying boards and commission members. Currently, board and commission members are prohibited from receiving financial compensation. This would eliminate that prohibition. It doesn't mean that suddenly board and commission members would get a payday. It just would open the door for the council to start to, if they so chose, to say, okay, this board and commission, you spend 2 full work days every month, morning to evening, working on this, and you're reading all this material, and it's a lot of work. And so we want to provide some compensation. One of the reasons for that is that, a lot of people who maybe would want to participate in this civic duty can't, because they need to work. So it would sort of broaden the pool, widen the pool of people, get people who are maybe in different financial situations or work in different industries. It would just kind of give us a little broader section of the population of folks who might be willing to do this important work. This proposal also would set the county clerk's term at 6 years. Currently, the county clerk does not face any term limits, but every 2 years, the county council must reinstate them. And so this would set the term at 6 years. I think the idea is that it would provide some stability. The county clerk would know, okay, I've got 6 years. I don't have to worry about, what's going to happen in 2 years. Will the council still want me? And again, I think it sort of removes the clerk's position from the political process. The clerk wouldn't need to cozy up to the council in order to maintain that position. Let's see. This proposal would also eliminate the requirement that no more than a bare majority of a board or commission may belong to the same political party. I heard an interesting story about this one, which is that when the Charter Commission was assembled, and you can tell me if this is correct or not, it turned out that there was a supermajority on the Charter Commission that was all from the same political party, all registered Democrats. Yeah, all registered Democrats. So there is this prohibition in the charter. As I understand, 50 years ago, this served, an important purpose. But in the 1990s, voters made, mayoral and county council elections nonpartisan. So the significance of creating this, having equal political party representation, it sort of lost its value. So I think the idea behind removing this requirement is that it would be easier to populate boards.
One thought about that
Yeah,
is I used to receive the application forms for people who are trying to get boards appointed to boards and commissions, and the far majority would put down nonpartisan. So I mean, even if they were really Democrats or Republicans or whatever, there's no stipulation that you vote with a party label. So you can just identify yourself as independent or a nonpartisan. And it was a struggle to get people to fill that blank out. I mean, people didn't want to touch it in any form. And it's really not meaningful in a nonpartisan government. So yeah, I was always supporting that concept.
Yes, I think that's the idea. It's no longer as meaningful when you have a nonpartisan government to have this. This can sort of just trip up the process of populating these boards. We're still on the same proposal, you guys. So the fifth thing that this would do is stagger the membership of new boards so that 5 members would serve 3-year terms and 4 members would serve 2-year terms, and provide that board members serving for an initial term of less than 3 years may be reappointed to a full term on the same board. So this proposal is doing a lot. This was put forth as a recommendation from the Charter Commission. But we also have proposal 10A. So the council has an alternative to this proposal. It's slightly different, but in some meaningful ways. So I'll walk you through the changes as best I can. This proposal would create an 11-member independent nomination board, as opposed to the Charter Commission's 9-member board. So 2 additional members. It would also change how these members are appointed. So the council's alternative would populate the nomination board with 2 members appointed by the mayor without council approval, and 9 members appointed by the council without mayoral approval. So it wouldn't require that consensus that would be required with proposal A. This proposal is also different in that the nominating board would nominate folks for the positions of corporation counsel, prosecuting attorney, and prosecuting attorney only, whereas the other proposal also would do this for the county clerk and the auditor. This proposal would also eliminate the majority requirement pertaining to political party. It would also remove the prohibition on paying board and commission members, and it would also stagger the memberships, as I just explained. Dave, you were involved in this one. Is there anything I'm missing here?
Yeah, and the main point on that is
Yeah.
the council proposes to do the majority of the appointments for this board and commission. The corporation counsel and the prosecuting attorney are the 2 top legal officers of the county. That's an administrative chore. It's not a legislative chore to make that appointment. So the council is basically getting in front of that by appointing their team to make the review. And then at the end, they get to confirm again. So they get two dips at it. They get the front end and the back end of it. And so a mayor was going to have to dance through that. He's going to have to be able to recruit people who are willing to go through that.
Yeah.
We, our county government, even though it's nonpartisan, it shifts in political views, right? And so one lens that I think is useful to look at these proposals is, maybe your team is in charge now. Well, what happens when your team isn't in charge, right? Does the county still work well? And so that's, I think that's a useful sort of lens to try to see, is this a balanced proposal that no matter which set of perspectives are in charge, that there's some sort of balance that's keeping the county government moving in a productive direction.
So I have some pretty strong feelings about this proposal. And this proposal started off as two different proposals. So there was a board and commission advisory board that was supposed to help recruit, because counties who have a real problem recruiting people to boards and commissions. You folks don't have anything better to do with your extra time, go sign up for a board and commission. But yeah, they're having a real problem. They should be getting like 80, 90 applications per year. The last turnaround, I think they got like 45. That makes it really hard to populate the boards. And then a lot of people are leaving the boards because of the 5-year term. So, and maybe the pandemic had something to do with it as well. So there's a whole splash in there. But this board and commission advisory board grew out of an ad hoc thing that Mayor Arakawa had, and Professor Mayer was participated in it. He really stuck with him, and he brought this to us, our commission, and I kind of liked it myself, because as a board and commission guy, I could see how that would help recruit for boards and commissions. We had another body also that was supposed to be made up of attorneys. There was supposed to be I think the circuit court judge was going to appoint somebody, and there was an elaborate process to make sure they had expertise, so that at least the two attorneys, and I think the corporation counsel, I mean the prosecutor and the corporation counsel, if for those who don't understand this, it's the chief legal officer of the county. These guys, this other board was going to have the expertise to be able to make this very difficult recommendation to the mayor, and then the mayor would get to review it and then send it to the council. It would make a recommendation from that choice. That second board went away and got melded into this one, the board and commission one, and it didn't come with the expertise. So you have a body that's really set up to review laymen to see whether they're good enough to serve on the county's 30 plus boards and commissions. And now they're making choices about the corporation counsel and the prosecutor, the chief of our law enforcement operation. And then I think the council did some wise things. I mean, dropping off the auditor and the other stuff is fundamentally flawed. And then what the council did was jumping in and trying to take the front end by having their people populate the majority of the appointment process. Kind of, to me, it was a poison pill. Like, it's kind of killed the possibility on the thing. So I really think that both proposals should be rejected.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and actually we have only got 10 minutes left and we've still got 3 more. So number 11 is really easy. It just asks basically whether you think the county auditor should have to figure out how much all of these proposals cost going forward. And then I'm going to have Brittany actually take on number 13. We're going to skip ahead, and then we're going to come back to 12, which is a really big one. And Michael, I'm probably going to have you switch with Gina so she can come and talk about that.
Perfect. And in the meantime, I'll discuss with you 13 briefly. This says, shall the Maui County Charter be amended to establish a county policy to promote climate change adaptation, including by implementing guidelines to allow certain county employees to telework and have alternative work schedules. As I understand, the county already has a teleworking policy in place that's, union approved. It already allows, in some cases, some workers to have alternative schedules, and that's done in conjunction with unions. Of course, police officers can't work from home. You know, if you're working for Parks and Recs, you probably can't work from home. But there are a lot of people in the larger bureaucracy who can. So this would sort of enshrine into law this newfound love we all have of telework. And we'll move backwards actually to 12. Marina, you can.
Yes, so 12 came from the council, so not directly from the Charter Commission. And we have Gina Young, who's an executive assistant in Council Member Shane Sinensi's office, and he was the person who proposed this. And that amendment reads, shall the Maui County Charter be amended to establish Maui County Community Water Authorities with regional community boards to manage water collection and delivery systems acquired by the water authorities, including the state license areas in East Maui. Sorry, this is kind of a long one, to pursue long-term water lease agreements with the state to secure a long-term reliable supply of water for domestic and agricultural needs. So can you tell us more about what that proposal means?
I sure can. I just wanted to say first that Shane really wanted to be here, but his flight was canceled due to weather in Hana. So he asked me to step in and explain it. And this charter amendment, it came out of a long-term effort that we had to find pricing security for the county and water availability security for the county. When Shane first took office 4 years ago, we began talking to county attorneys to make sure the county would be adequately protected in the East Maui lease process. And what we learned is that the current agreement that we have for water is terminated when the long-term lease is granted. It's also terminated with 1 year's notice at any point. So we started having discussions with the state DLNR who manages the state lease. And what we learned from them is that the lease cannot include rate protections for the county. We would have to negotiate once the lease is granted with the leaseholder. We also learned that the current lease applicant, when they submitted their EIS, there were no plans to fix the leaking system. And that was really unsettling. We know that at some point that system is going to have to be fixed. There's no way around it if you want water, especially during climate change. With Shane coming out of Hana, we have a private system in Hana that had to do infrastructure upgrades. And because they're a private company, they don't have access to grant funding. Their prices went up 400%. We didn't want that to happen to the county. The state legislature has also mandated that a water appraisal be done as part of the public auction process. So what that means is they're going to have to look at what the fair value of the water is. And just for comparison, the state manages 5 irrigation systems. Their price is 50 cents per 1,000 gallons. The county's agreement right now is 3 cents per 1,000 gallons. That agreement has a stipulation that the county support that leaseholder in obtaining a long-term lease. Once that long-term lease is gone, there's no more incentive to provide those low-term rates. The current lease applicant is also a private foreign investment company who has a fiduciary duty to make money for the Canadian pensioners. So it's not a local company anymore that's going to be working with the county. The state also told us during the meetings with them that the county has priority over a commercial interest in getting the lease. And not only that, because we use it for domestic, which is a protected public use of the water, we would probably get the lease for gratis, for free. And that's going to be significantly less than what the current lease applicant would be getting the water for. We also learned during committee meetings that thousands of communities across the country upgrade their old leaky systems, and they use federal grant money to do that. And there's literally tons of engineering companies out there that go out and get your grant funding for you, do your business modeling, and help you manage your system and do those upgrades. So we had them come and tell us about all these communities out there that have done this. And that was very empowering to hear that. So combine this with climate change, repeated drought restrictions due to less water in a leaking system, and we knew we had to find a better option than what we were facing. So at this point, we began working with county attorneys, with Corp Counsel, and we looked at all of our options. We did look at the Department of Water Supply, but they don't have grant writers. They don't even use grant money for our own infrastructure upgrades, probably why we have such a long waiting list up country. They also don't have any watershed management experience too. And you really need that if you're going to grow water. You can't just dewater the systems forever and expect them to continue returning water. So we looked around the country, so we can't be the only ones. And we found that most of these regional water systems are managed by water authorities and even around the world. And these are nonprofit government agencies that have expert staff in water system management, business modeling, watershed management, grant funding and financing, and community outreach. And then they have community boards that are invested in managing those watersheds to continue to grow water and to have a healthy ecosystem. So once we knew we didn't have to recreate the wheel, it was really exciting. And the managing director took note of what was happening. And he came to us and he supported the idea during committee. And he asked, hey, can you make this county-wide? Let's not just do it for East Maui. And other communities were asking the same thing of us. The county's been looking at purchasing other water systems. We've all heard about Wailuku water system. We've heard about what's going on in Molokai. There's a lot of legacy dilapidated plantation systems that are in the county that the county can purchase, but we just need an entity that's got the ability to manage them and to get that grant financing. I don't know if you mentioned that the auditor stated that the costs are unknown, and that's because it's impossible to know what the grant funding is right now. But how these operate is that operational costs are run out of the rates, just like the Department of Water Supply. And CIP funding comes from grant funding, and you do your CIP operations. I'll wrap up in just a second, based on the kind of funding that you have. So we want to continue the public-private partnership that we have. There's a lot to benefit for the leaseholder. We can help repair systems so there's more water for everybody and have a win-win situation.
Thank you for talking through all of that. And our panelists, everybody, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much for being here and educating us. I mean, these are really important. This only happens once every 10 years. So thank you. I also want to mahalo our audience. You guys spent your Friday evening with us. We're so grateful. Thank you for being here. Last but not least, I do want to thank the two foundations that make our Maui County reporting possible, the Nuevo Futuro Foundation and the Fred Baldwin Memorial Foundation. I also want to thank again UH Maui for hosting us here tonight. Thank you everybody who's been involved this evening. It's been great being here with you.
Oh, well, I have